As editor-in-chief of Package Design magazine, I speak with some of the most brilliant thought leaders in the design, branding, and marketing of consumer packaged goods. Through the generous support of our sponsors, we bring these experiences to you. This video series explores what inspires these thought leaders and their insights on the collaborative design process as a strategic business competence. I'm Linda Casey, and this is Package Design Matters.
Hello, my name is Doris Brown. I'm the Worldwide Brands Business Development Manager at Hewlett-Packard's Graphic Solutions Business Group. I'm here to welcome you to this Package Design Matters webcast. The webcast features Ximena O'Reilly, Global Head of Visual Identity and Design at Nestlé. As a leading nutrition and health wellness company, Nestlé is committed to enhancing people's lives everywhere and every day. A creative strategist by nature, Ximena is motivated by the power of visual storytelling to design brands and product experiences that excite people. Her experience in brand identity, packaging, communication campaigns, and e-commerce is grounded with a strong international outlook. What a great person to hear from today. So with that, I give you Ximena O'Reilly.
Before the camera started rolling, we had discussed a little bit about your work with the Global Insights and some of the travels that you do to kind of understand the consumer. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about your Global Insight work, where it takes you, maybe some of the places it takes you, and some of the brands that you've seen and worked with?
You know, what I am very sensitive to is I want to make sure that I'm getting a firm understanding of the landscape first. You know, so I'm not coming in and looking at some of their packaging and saying, it's looking a little old-fashioned, or, you know, couldn't you be doing this and this? I want to understand why they've gotten to the place that they've gotten to, and then start to peel away at perhaps, you know, some potential opportunities. So that means, you know, going to, you know, for instance, I was mentioning I'm going to Turkey at the end of this trip, you know, and I'll be spending a day going with the marketing and the sales teams through some of the retail channels, supermarkets, and it's not just the modern trade, you know, we want to look at the traditional trade also. And if possible, I also want to see people's homes, you know, see how people are interacting with our products, whether it's on the go or in their homes, etc. We have many products that accompany cooking, you know, so understanding the cultural differences in terms of cooking and the relationship people have with food, you know, some of the customs they have with sharing food, etc., is really important before we then start to evaluate whether it be the visual identity or the packaging design.
And the sauce that you just lifted, it's a very heritage-rich design. So
It is.
can you tell us a little bit about it?
It's iconic, isn't it? This
Yes.
bottle. It's very unusual. Yeah, no, like this is Maggi. Maggi is one of our global brands present in dozens and dozens of countries worldwide. Less present here in the US. It's not well known outside of the Hispanic community. But it is a brand that was born in Germany years ago by Julius Maggi, and this is a sauce that, you know, I think it's similar to many products that were developed at this time when, you know, there wasn't a lot of nutrients in the food, you know, so Worcestershire sauce is another one that is not from Nestlé, but, you know, that added a little touch of nutrients to go with the food, and this stems from that era. Now, Maggi today is a phenomenal brand that has everything from bouillon cubes, you know, to modern cooking helps, you know, so things that help you cook a chicken more efficiently, you know, with all of the juiciness that you might be looking for, especially if you're a little bit of a novice cook, as some of us are, or if you're starved for timing. You know, Maggi's one of those brands that, you know, helps people, you know, just get to a better end result in a shorter amount of time.
Imagine what the world will look like in 2030. Packaging will need to work harder than ever to compete successfully at retail and beyond. Consumers will be connected with wearable technology. Retail will be centres of brand experience. Think package designs with concise, flexible messaging, not claims that get ignored, but targeted benefits that scream, "I'm right for you." This isn't too weird to contemplate, it's already started. Are you designing for the future? We are.
And another part of your background that probably informs your design is you have quite the international background.
I know I've had the good fortune of living in places where I didn't speak the language, for instance. So during my college studies, I studied Japanese for many years, and then I was able to spend some time living in Japan. And you know, I thought that I knew a substantial amount of Japanese until I went and lived there and realized, wow, there are a lot of these characters. So, you know, and thus, you know, you start to use the powers of observation, you know, much more. You depend on them. You know, it's your survival mechanism. You can't read the signs. You can't very well communicate. You know, so what else can you draw from? And so, for instance, for me now, when I go to a country where I don't speak the language and I cannot read any of the words or the signs or anything on the pack, you know, I start to look at other codes, you know, other symbols, because there are some universal truths. You know, we may think that we're so different from one another, and in some cases we are, but nevertheless there are universal truths that we can tap into, and you know, and approach things from a very empathetic manner. You know, asking lots of questions before forming any opinions.
Brand narration and visual translation is a keystone service of Product Ventures that grounds design in a clear strategic vision before putting pen to paper. True to the saying, a picture speaks 1,000 words, we identify what needs to be said and how best to say it visually so that we can most effectively resonate with the consumer. By leveraging design in this thoughtful manner, we make the most of the precious few seconds at shelf by communicating the brand and product proposition in a resounding way that is not only aesthetically desirable, but also strategically aligned.
And to help me understand a little bit about the teams that you're working with, so you're going with these different teams in these different countries. Are you working with marketing? Are they brand managers and product managers? Are the insights people? Are they all of the above? What is centralized at Nestlé and what is decentralized?
So when I'm on the ground and then working with the teams, it tends to be mostly marketing and sales that I'm interacting with the most. Probably marketing more than anybody. And if there are design teams in the markets, because we don't have design teams in every market, then of course I'm interacting with them too. But definitely marketing, and Insights is integrated into marketing, so that's why I'm not calling them out separately.
Okay, so Insights is integrated into marketing, and then separate design teams sometimes and sometimes not.
Yeah.
So in the case when there is not a design team for that particular market, who's carrying out designs? Who are you collaborating with?
The agencies. So that's why I always ask that the design agencies, in some cases it's advertising agencies, some of our markets, you know, there isn't a huge talent base in those countries, you know, so I want to make sure that whoever is touching the design is also present in any of the meetings that we're having when we're actually discussing the design. So that's where it is really important that we have our external partners there, because of course I'm depending on influencing the marketing teams, you know, if I find, you know, reasons to suggest that they approach things slightly differently. But of course, then they may or may not have the competency to brief a design agency if there is no one internally who can be that translator. Because let's face it, there is a translation gap, right? If you are not as familiar with design, with branding, and then specifically with packaging design, writing design briefs is really tough for some marketing people. So we want the designers to be in the room so they're hearing it and they're helping to craft the solution together.
At the start of a project where it's a blank piece of paper and the problem seems a pretty challenging one, how do we get inspired is, I think, a really useful question to get something from an idea or a concept all the way into manufacture. It is a team process. It's a very collaborative process. It's really about the collective, and that is the powerful piece. One person with one idea plus one person with another idea is potentially 3 and beyond really good ideas. We're delighted to have our name attached to such an incredible list of contributors.
And your background helps out here too, because you've also been on the agency side. You were at LPK.
Yes.
So.
Yep, I was. Yeah, in fact, I started on the agency side, worked for years in agencies, and started really in corporate identity. I'm not sure if that's even a term anymore, but that's what I was working in San Francisco at Interbrand and Landau before that. So, okay. And much of that kind of mid-90s emergence of branding and brand identity, it's been very formative for me, because we should be approaching all of our product brands in the same way. We are just bypassers in the lives of these products, these brands, and so we need to make sure that we're cultivating a culture of understanding that if we touch any part of these iconic elements, there needs to be a very good and solid reason for it.
We live in a fast-changing digital world. Dynamic communication and social expression influence just about everything we do. Business is digital. Impact is instant. Brands and customers interact in amazing new ways. From postage stamps to packaging and billboards, HP's Graphic Solutions business is leading these transformations, creating innovative digital print technologies that enable more effective, engaging communication between brands and end users.
This brand, After 8, I don't know if you know it. This is actually one I picked up in duty free, so it's a little larger than most. But I have visceral memories of this brand from my childhood, when so in the 70s, when my parents would entertain, they would always close the evening with an After 8 pack. I think it was about half the size. And in the morning, my brother and myself would run down, and we would rummage inside of here, and we would hope that within one of these sleeves there would still be an After 8. It was such an amazing experience to go down, and sometimes they would be all empty, but you actually had to rummage, to, if you can see, there are all these individual little pockets, and you can't really tell if they're all empty, because some people take it out like this and eat the whole thing. Some people just take out the mint and leave the empty sleeve inside. So if we were to make a decision based on cost, I'm sure we would eliminate all of these little sleeves, right? But we would be eliminating the ritual, whether it was the ritual I had or a ritual, but there is a ritualistic element to a brand like this. So that's why I really ask teams to understand, the whole brand experience, especially when it relates to product. And then in terms of revitalizing a brand, yeah, absolutely. I've brought some product from Switzerland, because these are products that some of it spans borders, but not too much. But this is Caillé. Caillé was actually the inventor of milk chocolate many years ago.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and it's a small brand within Switzerland, does some export business. And the amazing thing about Caillé is that the factory still is producing the chocolate today, and all of the milk that goes into our products is from 30 kilometers of the factory. So there's a real product truth there. It's meaningful and it's delicious. You can try some of this later. But it is a product that in Switzerland people take for granted, and so it wasn't about sort of reinventing the brand, but it was about saying, okay, if we introduce a new line with some innovation, how do we do that and get Swiss consumers, who are the biggest chocolate consumers in the world, to actually notice it and pay attention? So we had this opportunity about a year ago when we launched this range, which is an amazing product, because the inclusions are actually visible. They're dropped onto it. And so what we had to do with the packaging story was, of course, show the brand, but try and dedicate as much space as possible to showing the product. And that was a little bit tricky. I mean, this is a fake image, right? It's a photograph. We wanted to do a window, but we couldn't from a manufacturing standpoint. But I think that this does a pretty good job, so in terms of revitalizing a brand, it isn't about, creating something, completely disruptive, but nevertheless, this does disrupt its shelf, and yet it's recognizable as being from this brand. And so I think authenticity, visual authenticity plays, into it. This is another part of the Cahiers portfolio, which is actually cooking chocolate. So this is humble, right? It's humble, it's not in your face, it's got a cue of the whisk, but I think it's about being very truthful to the brand and the product within.
Do you believe a stronger idea can lift an entire business? Or that a single insight can spark new ways to succeed? At Bemis, we believe there's always a better way to boost consumer demand, stand out on the shelf, or create a deeper brand experience. Today, we strive to see the world as you see it. And when that happens, there's no limit to where you can take your packaging or your business.
And with both those chocolate bars, what's great about the package design is that it's communicating a message. With the cooking chocolates, it almost looks like craft paper. I don't know if it is, but it communicates the idea of raw, of something that is going to be handmade in the future. So definitely is a great way to communicate the message. And the inclusions are such a modern way to communicate to consumers who are, into granola, into kind bars and things of that nature.
Look at this. You see how unique that is?
Oh my goodness. So I thought the inclusions would actually lay on top, but they are partially covered in the chocolate. Yeah. So the star remains the chocolate.
It is chocolate. It is absolutely, the star is chocolate, but every single piece is different. So we played with, I can't show you this because I didn't bring enough, but we played with even the photography. Because we had the luxury of using digital printing, we actually did a number of different facings, so that
oh my goodness,
it didn't need to be consumer noticeable. It was just that little wink in the eye that if you happened to see the products stacked on shelf one after another, they weren't all identical. Because no bar is identical to one another.
Because you use a newer technology, you had the wrappers digitally printed, you were able to get rid of a limitation and actually deliver something personalized.
Yeah. Look, we're really trying to see, where digital printing is most useful. Some of that is more linked to campaigns, where we can integrate many different messages and intercept it more. Sometimes it's, unfortunately not feasible yet. It's one of those new technologies that over time will come down in price or will be available because it just isn't available in many of our markets. So whenever we do practice a new technology, we make sure internally to share so that others can understand what different teams have done with it.
Definitely be able to share the best practices, and as you said, the technology is always evolving. We just saw two big digital presses come out into the digital market from a fairly big digital printing company, and they've been leveraged for. They've been using digital printing for things for Coca-Cola and everything like that. But what I love was the idea that not every digital printing application has to be so overt. You have such a subtle use. And that's something that maybe other designers wouldn't realize. It's like, okay, let's subtly communicate something that says this is personalized, unique, and this is high-end and premium. Let's make sure it truly is distinctive and unique. Because so often we heard the word unique for packaging. So this is a unique package. And there were a million wrappers made, and it's like, well, I don't know, 1 million of one design is truly unique. It was unique maybe for the first one.
Look, I think that it's just the beginning. I think there are some companies that are leveraging digital printing much more than we are. We're still in the very early phases, but but the possibilities are amazing. You know, even if it's just being able to personalize a recipe that's on the back of a pack, you know, nothing else needs to change on the pack, but if we can just customize, you know, specific to a particular geographic region. As I said, you know, we're very sensitive to you know, food habits being very different market to market, you know, but maybe if we want to have some more consistency at the brand level, we guide our marketers, you know, to play more with the areas that can connect more emotionally with their consumers.
So I imagine that the Kit Kat package in Japan is probably, the package design brief is probably way more complex than it is from most countries.
It is, and it is probably the greatest aberration from all of the standards that we have, because Kit Kat is one of our globally managed brands from Vevey, but Japan, of course. I mean, this is the beauty of Nestlé. We respect that that some markets have a much longer history with a brand than others, and so they've developed their own product lines as a result, and so there's the ability to have more flexibility when it comes to such things as packaging.
And I love the technical details, so you'll have to forgive me. So you kind of touched on this before. We're trying to kind of have some control over the logos and the assets, and you have some digital tools and things like that. So can you talk a little bit more about, you know, how that works? Is you have these global standards. Do they reside in a certain place? Is there a centralized approving process, a digital asset management system for the whole company, or is it different for each market?
Yeah, so there is now a global digital asset management system. It's been around for a few years. It is a journey, and it is one that, in fact, as soon as people start realizing the potential of tapping into it, then the uptake is massive. But we come from a heritage where every market created their own systems, right? So the pain point is transitioning, especially if maybe you've invested quite a bit in a legacy system, to then move to a global system. But the global system is great because it integrates both an asset management component, but it also looks at process management, you know, so that we can put design briefs on there and manage all of the steps. But we give a lot of flexibility to our different brands and to our markets to collaborate with the center and decide, you know, how much governance will there be, some brands more so than others, and then how they use the system. If we share some good case studies of how some brands have been able to save time, money, been able to take an idea from one market and reapply it, customize it for their market, and they were able to, you know, get to market faster. That's what wins, right? That's what gets people excited, and that's where we're finding that this system is really able to generate a lot of fans.
As a design leader, that's just got to be wonderful, because I know that it's sometimes seems like the kind of boring side of things, like, you know, digital asset management, process management. Sometimes it doesn't sometimes seem like the most exciting thing in the world, but it enables and empowers people to do some exciting things with their thoughts, with their strategy, enables you not to be only more efficient, but also, I imagine, gives you a better opportunity to lead, because you're able to communicate to a larger group.
Yeah. But I actually use another platform that we use internally to complement it, which is a Salesforce platform called Chatter, which is sort of like an internal Facebook, you know. It's just for within Nestlé. Some of our external partners are able to access some of it, but we can post things. So I'm sure on this trip, if I see some packaging that interests me or some visual identity work, I'll take quick snaps of it, and then I can post it online and put some commentary, and that starts a dialogue, that starts a conversation. And I can either post it to the whole organization, or I've got specific groups within Nestlé that I can focus it on, you know. So whether it's specifically about packaging, I've got a group of followers of that topic, or whether it's just our design community, you know, I might focus in on just them. Exactly, it's a little bit of the nudging, you know. It's not necessarily always calling out, our opportunity areas and making people feel uncomfortable. It's much more about, guiding them to come to that realization themselves. Sometimes we need to be a little bit direct, as a design leader, but sometimes it's not the place. It's more about sort of bringing, as you said, the inside in, and letting the community of marketing leaders who are responsible for the brand come to the same conclusion themselves. It's about, I think, really fostering a community, a culture of respect for everybody's point of view, but then truly understanding what sort of complementary skill sets we have, and making sure that they're part of the process at the right stages. It sometimes isn't fair to put someone who's very comfortable at more of the graphic supply chain end to be involved in the strategy. They might learn something from it, but to measure their success based on that, when conversely you might have someone who's a great design strategist who knows nothing about printing.
Exactly.
And they shouldn't be involved at that stage, or they should be skilled up. So I try to build teams where there needs to be a lot of honesty and transparency in terms of your skill sets. I have to be very honest about where I feel comfortable and where my limitations lie. And thus I think on both internally and externally. And I mention externally too because I can be quite tough with agencies. Because it is, I've been on the agency side, and often you want to present yourselves as being able to do everything. Or to start here and take it all the way through. And I think, real kudos to the agencies who put their hands up and say, look, work with us for this kind of a project, or work with us through these phases, or don't work with us until you're at this stage, and then we'll do a brilliant job on execution. I have tremendous rapport with agencies who have that level of transparency with me, because I know that I won't set themselves up for failure.
I think it takes a good bit of self-control to be able to say no. Like you said, you have to give these agencies respect, because I think all of us want to be the answer. I think it's a human nature to want to be the answer to everyone's problems. You want to solve people's problems, and to understand that it's part of human nature, and to understand that people do have limitations is really great. And as you said, making sure that they're not set up to fail is so important for designers, because we have to make sure that design is respected, design shows up, design delivers results in the corporate environment, and building that reputation and importance for design in a corporate environment is hugely important. And how are you doing that at Nestlé? How are you making sure that design is really getting its due?
And so we have a great way of approaching brand building at Nestlé. We call it the brand building Nestlé way. And I very quickly understood that design needed to be integrated in there in order to be able to participate in the brand building dialogue from the very beginning. So we've got an exciting workshop that I've developed called the 5 Senses, which looks at the multi-sensorial properties of the brand. And then we start to then look back at the brand properties that exist today, and we start to look at create a gap analysis. And so that's very inspiring, because at the table in those sessions, it's a multifunctional team that works on it. It's marketing led, but we always have all of the functions represented. And we have at least the advertising agency, the design agency, and in many cases the digital agency there. So then it becomes much easier to say, this isn't about packaging, is it? It's really about how our brand comes to life from a look and feel, and then that nurtures a culture of not just acceptance, but just true understanding that, okay, we need to bring in design at a very early stage, and it is going to inform some of the decisions that we make, of course on packaging, but well beyond.
Could you share with our audience an example of something amazing that came out of one of these sessions?
So, I have the one that we've been referring to. So this came out of a 5 Senses workshop. And it was done in a little bit of a hurry, but if you cannot feel this, but if you did feel it, you would see that there is some texture. Now, it is a printed piece of paper, but if you can feel the ridge where the label goes onto the chocolate imagery, that's all done in a digital printer. But we knew coming out of the five senses that as much as we could bring to life the idea of the atelier, which means the studio, you know, the place where the chocolate master would be creating the chocolate creations, you know, even if it is something as subtle as adding a little bit of texture, making this seem like a label. I'm using that word again, but truly in this sense we mean it. You know, the chocolate has just come out, has cooled, and the label is wrapped around it. That is going to help with just, you know, an element of touch that feeds into the five senses. Now, you know, where else has that come to life? We've just relaunched Lean Cuisine here in the U.S. It's just hitting the shelves, and you'll see that that we've looked at all of our visual properties, and we've done, I think, a very nice job at changing the brand mark and introducing a symbol for the brand. I don't have an example here, which is a shame. But what we've done, which I think is really lovely, is look at food photography in a different way. You know, so of course we want to, you know, in your food company, you want to be showing food in the most appetizing way possible. But how do you do it so that it is echoing the brand truth, what the brand wants to aspire to be? And I think on Lean Cuisine, what we've done is, you know, we've pushed ourselves further than where we've been in the past, with using different textures for the background of the support for the further shots, so whether it be slate or different plates. And
definitely, I think of my mother's generation, and when she would buy Stouffer's or, you know, one of any frozen food, the idea was, I'm going to buy something that I don't want, that's going to be complex to make, because I don't want to have to make this from scratch. It's complex, it takes time, let's make my life easier. But now we're seeing consumers move towards simpler eating. They're looking for things with, you know, ingredients that they can see, something that looks more natural, more almost homemade. So even though the food is coming from the freezer, they're looking for this kind of homemade type of experience. And we're seeing that a lot of brands have been able to resonate with that kind of homemade, simple, let's talk about natural eating. I think of startups like Evolve and Amy's and those brands. And they not only are able to do this through great, you know, product development, but they're also able to do this through package design. So how can a brand like Nestlé use package design to defend against stylish startups?
I think sometimes as a big brand, we tend to forget some of the unique qualities, what made that brand successful in the first place. You know, so back to when I get involved with a brand, you know, I want to know not just the context and, you know, people's relationship with the brand, but I also want to know the whole archaeology, the history. And sometimes you dig up some amazing little nuggets of information. I remember I was working with one of our pizza brands, and they told me that their brand is the only brand that has cheese from Wisconsin. And I said, really? Where do I see that on pack? And it was this tiny little stamp, you know. And I said, well, is that a product truth that's meaningful for consumers? Well, we think so. Well, why isn't it more prominent? You know, and they said, well, you know, on our hierarchy of communication, it was always there, but it was a little bit lower. And I said, yeah, because you're using lots of category norms above that, you know, the cheesy slice and the this and the, you know, but maybe consumers are, you know, they're looking for another reason why to choose you over something else. So maybe you got to elevate that up a little bit. You know, so that's a little bit of the work that I do. I'm not always right, you know, but I'm looking for what are the unique attributes that we can truly and meaningfully talk about that will resonate with consumers.
And as a designer, you have so much more to work with now as far as telling that brand story, that meaningful brand truth. You have social, you have mobile, as well as package design and other marketing and merchandising materials. Can you talk a little bit about how that's changing what you're doing? How is the mobile world and the social world changing the way you design?
Once we've identified what are the key components of your brand identity, then it enables much more creativity for our design partners who might be creating for those platforms to not only bring the brand to life from the point of view of reflecting the brand essence and the tone of voice and the personality, which is locked up in a lot of our brand fundamentals, but also visually, how do you bring that to life so that there's some connectivity to the rest of the brand experience?
And I have to ask this because when I was picking up your filled chocolate chips, and so I have to ask, was that structure designed with social media in mind? Because it's the perfect size, perfect dimensions for Instagram. It's square versus the rectangle. Are you looking at structure differently?
Well, I can't comment on that one because I was not involved, so I don't know. But yes, absolutely. We are more and more looking at whether it be the social dimension or e-commerce. In fact, I am quite a pain with agencies who don't think about that when they're presenting, for instance, new package designs. Because if you aren't thinking about how this sits when shrunk down, whether it be on an Amazon shelf or through other properties, and especially when there's typically a white background, how does it stand out? Is it differentiating? Within just a few pixels, does your brand stand out? Those are all of the filters through which we need to be evaluating all of the ways that we're communicating visually, and of course from a packaging perspective.
Definitely. And then with social and as well as the consumer shelf being so important, I think the recent news about Amazon Dash moving from that barcode reader to the shelf talkers is really kind of a testament to the power of the consumer home as a retail selling environment. And I could see how products like Purina could really leverage that. Are you looking at Amazon Dash or other shopping environments at home?
Yeah, no, we absolutely are. I think there are many parts of our portfolio that will benefit from it. Just think about running out of coffee, or running out of bouillon cubes, or feeding your cat or dog, or and I think this is probably one of the areas that we're going to be working on first and foremost is the area of infant nutrition. You rely on, whether it be diapers, P&G I'm sure is looking very carefully at that. But for us, it would be making sure that if a woman chooses to use formula, that she doesn't run out of the formula that she depends on.
I am not a Keurig user. I am a Nespresso user. I love
excellent.
my Nespresso machine.
Yes.
And Nestlé has been doing a wonderful job as of late with the Nescafe and Nespresso lines and really bringing that awareness to the U.S.
And Nescafe, I think, has been doing a really good job at re-establishing its credentials. Nescafe is a very old brand from perspective of other coffee brands. And it also has its own machines through its sub-brand Dolce Gusto, which are also very fun machines. And I think that, one of the things that we possibly need to be doing a better job at, especially here in the U.S., is just broadening the awareness of these brands. If you go to Mexico, for instance, Nescafe is a huge brand there. Everybody knows Nescafe and immediately makes the connection with Nestlé. I don't think that's the case here in the U.S. And yet, I'm sure that we have products within the Nescafe range that everybody, because it's such an accessible brand, that everyone can like. And I will admit something on camera right now. So I am a Nespresso drinker. I love Nespresso. But I also now love Nescafe. I couldn't say that 2 years ago. Because I had also sort of felt that Nescafe was maybe a little bit old-fashioned. It was, in my mind, it was something that some older generations in my family would use, but not me. I was Nespresso. But I have been pleasantly surprised, because in fact there have been a lot of new innovations, not just in some of our traditional Nescafe products, but more specifically in some of the new ways that people are coming into the coffee franchise, and that may be through shakes, or it could be through iced coffees, or it could be through on-the-go coffees, and Nescafe has been continuing to innovate in that space.